Morning. Hello, hello. My name is Kuiper Don't Care, and if you're watching this video, it probably means that you are attempting to set up DK64 Archipelago for the very first time. This video is kind of meant to be an accompaniment to sort of the setup guide, the README files, and all that type of stuff for people that are getting DK64 Randomizer Archipelago set up. You're probably wondering why I have this website pulled up, and we'll get to that in a second. But the first thing I want to say is if you are brand new to this randomizer, which I would imagine most of you watching this video are, I would strongly suggest, on top of being a part of the general Archipelago Discord itself, feel free to join the DK64 randomizer Discord if you have any further questions about the randomizer itself, some of the settings that we're going to be going over, what they mean, logic things. We have a ton of resources. Myself, actually, I've made a couple of them actually for newer players. In case you've never played the game before, if you maybe played the game as a kid, if you perhaps, I don't know, maybe played it a couple years ago, but you're not really familiar with where all the checks are, I strongly suggest joining the DK64 Randomizer Discord for any questions along those lines. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about Archipelago today. And the first thing that I want to talk about is the way that this randomizer is going to be structured within Archipelago is you are actually going to be using this website, at least to my knowledge, you're going to be using this website to generate your seed. And the way we're going to handle it is you're going to be using a setting string, which we refer to in the DK64 community as a lanky file, but in this case, it's just going to be a setting string. The YAML file, which again, if you're familiar with Archipelago, you know that that's kind of where all of your settings are at the moment going to have very limited options. Until some kinks get worked out, the Archipelago gets more refined, the settings get more refined, what have you. And I want to kind of touch on each one of those things that are going to be in the YAML itself when we come across it. The main purpose of this video is to walk you through that setting string, the one that is going to be used for DK64 Archipelago, and kind of explain what all of it means and what can be expected of you within this randomizer. So first thing you're going to do is we're going to get onto the website, and we're actually going to load in the setting string that will be used for Archipelago. And I'm going to do that right now. We're going to import it. And then we're kind of going to handle all of the most important things kind of one at a time. The number one thing that I want to say is that the setting string cannot be altered. At the current moment, what you're seeing right now is the way it kind of has to be at the moment in order for it to run smoothly. In fact, I think some of it is in order for it to even work in general, right? So a lot of this stuff that we're going to be covering, except for the things that I bring up specifically, are not going to be changeable. There are, of course, some exceptions because obviously we have the cosmetics and the music and things like that. But all of these settings, the randomizers, the overworld, progression, quality of life, all that stuff, you're going to need to keep this the same as it is in the setting string for the time being. But that being said, let's get into what is going to be randomized, what's going to be shuffled, things like that. The first thing you'll notice here is we're going to have item randomizer. And these are all of the things that are randomized in this game. We have shops and moves. We have camera and shockwave, golden bananas, tough golden bananas. We'll get to that in a second. Battle crowns, blueprints, all of this stuff you see here, with the exception of ice traps. And we'll talk about ice traps a little bit later. Junk items, which for our purposes in DK are mainly just health upgrades. They're like little watermelon slices and stuff like that. And the crates. So these are the things that are randomized. If you know where the battle crowns are, if you know where the blueprints are, the banana metal checks, how they work, we'll talk about that as well. The Kongs themselves, the fairies, all this stuff, these are the things that are randomized within DK64. So when you do boot up the game, you are going to have the option of adjusting your starting move count. So that will be something that is in the YAML file. And the default option is 3. You see that here at the bottom here. You can adjust this number within the YAML itself. You do not have to adjust it here. You can adjust this on the actual YAML file. If you want to start with more moves, less moves than 3, you can do that. This one here, this is pretty important. Cross-Kong purchases are pretty important. And they kind of coincide with this other option here, the random shop prices. The way DK64 works normally is only the specific Kong that is attempting to go into a shop to buy their own moves are meant to buy the moves in the vanilla game, right? If you want to buy bongos with Donkey from Candy, you have to go into the candy shop with Donkey and buy it with him. In the randomizer, you don't have to do that. You can buy the move with whatever Kong the game randomly, put the bongos check on, right? If you're going to buy bongos in a shop, it could be bought by Diddy, it could be bought by Tiny, it could be bought by Chunky, it could be any random Kong. So that's the reason for this. And then the shop prices are going to be free. And the reason why the shop prices are going to be free is because coin logic in this game can be a little stinky. Depending upon what Kongs you have at the start of the game and what moves you have, what levels you have, you could very well not have access to any coins at all, or at least very, very few coins. And like most randomizers do, it kind of has to assume that you spent them incorrectly. So for the time being, all items that are inside of shops will be free. You could just walk right in with whatever Kong happens to be on the storefront face. It could be a GB, it could be a move, it could be an Archipelago item. You could walk right in and buy it without any money. So these two things kind of coincide a little bit. The amount of ice traps you have. So it says here that there are no traps on. However, there will be an option in the YAML itself for trap fill percentage. Mainly, it's going to have different weights for what types of traps you see. There are actually various types of traps in this game. We have ice traps, which kind of freeze you in place. We have traps that revert or invert your controls. Another one that kind of makes you slow and not able to jump as high. Things like that. That's all going to be in the YAML itself, this ice trap thing here. All of these shuffled locations are all off. Kasplats are vanilla. You don't have to worry about any of these things when you're playing DK64 Randomizer in Archipelago. These next couple things are not particularly important, but they are just kind of silly, fun things to have on. We have shuffle enemies. We have shuffle enemy speed. We also have shuffle K Rool phases, which exactly as you hover it over here, you see what that means. The order of the K Rool boxing match will randomly order the sequence, which is pretty fun. Same thing with the Helm rooms. If you happen to, when you go into Helm, you'll notice that you don't have to start with Donkey. You can start with any given Kong, and we'll also talk about that as well. We also have this shuffle bonus barrels, and we'll talk about bonus barrels in a minute. This is going to be another thing that while all of these options here are enabled, it's not actually going to matter because you're not going to be doing any of the bonus barrels, and we'll talk about that when we get to it. The last thing I want to talk about on this page itself is complex level order. Now, to a new player, this won't really mean anything. To understand complex level order, you kind of have to understand simple level order. But for the sake of Archipelago, complex level order effectively means within the confines of Donk that as long as it's logically possible for something to be in a location, it can be there. There isn't these... if I hover over it here, you can kind of see complex level order, same as level order, but the order of level entry won't be linear. Additionally, other protections that regular level order enforces to make it better to play will be removed. So what this really means to a new player is nothing. It really kind of doesn't mean anything. But to returning DK64 players, you understand that what this really means is that your training moves, which are your vine swinging, your orange throwing, your diving, your ability to go underwater, that's what diving is, and your ability to pick up barrels, are not going to be in the first 3 levels of the game, whichever those 3 levels happen to be. It also means that your Kongs, the missing Kongs that you don't have at the beginning of the game, are not going to be within the first 5 levels. They can be anywhere. And for the purposes of Archipelago, this means that they can be in other people's games, which is kind of the reason why complex level order needs to be enabled. The only exception, you can see it down here, the only exception for shuffled level order is Helm. Helm will always, always, always be where it normally is, which is at the very top of Krem Isle. You need all of the keys to open. Well, you don't need all the keys to open it up. You only need keys 6 and 7. And we'll talk about that later on. But Helm will always be in its normal location. You don't have to try to figure out where Helm is. Helm will always be in level 8. So that's how this screen works. Let's go to the overworld. And this is kind of where I was talking about those bonus barrels. So autocomplete bonus barrels is on. What this means is that anytime you were to come across a bonus barrel, whether it be a bonus barrel that's kind of hovering up in the sky, whether it be a bonus barrel that spawns after you do a particular task in the game, the barrel will explode immediately and reveal what was within it that was locked past the minigame. This has to be on. Do not turn this off. In fact, I'm going to tell you this right now. Don't turn any of this stuff off that you see when you load in these setting strings. Just keep everything the way it is, because as of right now, most of these things kind of need to be on in order for the randomizer to function properly. Next, we have remove barriers, and this might be one of the things that gets added probably sooner rather than later. There's a lot of different, within DK64 Randomizer, a lot of different settings that we play with. These barriers in the game, some of these are turned on, others are turned off. And what you can kind of treat this as is, if you have familiarity with DK64, you'll know that in Japes, there are some coconut gates that you have to shoot open in order to access other areas in the level. These are now opened. Same thing with the Aztec tunnel door that is normally locked behind having Diddy's guitar. You do not need guitar for that. So all of these ones that are clicked are the ones that are actually just going to be open to you from the start. The ones that are not clicked, obviously, are not open to you, which means in order to access the Forest Yellow Tunnel, which is the way you get to the Owl Tree, you're going to have Grape Shooter. Conversely, for Cave's Igloo pads, you do not need to fly through the star above the igloo to get these to spawn. They will already be there. So all these things, again, this might be something that is toggleable within the YAML itself. For right now, it is not, so don't touch it. Leave it the way it is. Faster checks, all of these are enabled. There's no reason for me to even open up this pop-up. These are just some of the slower, monotonous checks that, you know, take a couple attempts or take a couple rotations to complete. All of them have been sped up. And then finally, we have progressive switch strength. And again, this kind of requires a little bit of vanilla DK64 knowledge. The way the switches normally work in this game is you have a Simian Slam that you are given at the beginning of the game by Cranky, which allows you to ground pound green switches. Once you reach level 5, which is normally Fungi Forest, the switches turn to blue, which means you have to go to Cranky again inside of Forest and get the upgraded Simian Slam so that it becomes Blue Slam, is kind of what we refer to it. The final, I guess the final real level in the game, Creepy Castle, is level 7, and the switches in that level are red, which means there are 3 different progressive switch strengths in the game. Because we're playing with complex level order, and because the levels will be randomized amongst themselves, whatever level lands in Lobby 7, let's say, for example, it's Angry Aztec for this seed that you're doing, the switches in Aztec, because it's in Lobby 7, will be red. And you can kind of see the first 4 levels will have green, the next 2 will have blue, and the final will have red. So that is kind of a very short version of how that works. Again, the really simple way to think about it is there's 3 different slams in the game. Each, depending upon what level you're in, is going to open up certain switch doors. So glitchless logic, kind of self-explanatory. Your win con is beat K. Rool. Now, right now, this is the only win con that is available within Archipelago. There will be others that you can potentially do to kind of just give you an idea of all of the different things that DK64 has as far as win cons go that will potentially be added in the future. We have things like Acquire Key 8. We have Complete the DK Wrap, which is it's a fan favorite. collecting a certain amount of, collectibles, things like that. But as of right now, it's just beat K. Rool. That's going to stay the way it is. Free trade agreement. Here's another thing that's really, really, really important. In this randomizer, and again, I'm pretty sure it's going to be over here when we get to this part. Actually, no, it's just right here. We'll talk about this and this simultaneously, actually. So, free trade agreement is a setting in which any Kong can pick up any other Kong's collectibles. And normally that is not the case in the game. If you see a tiny blueprint laying on the ground, the only Kong that could pick it up normally is Tiny. With this setting on, any Kong can pick up any item. And that even goes as far as like GBs. There are certain GBs in the game that are expected to be picked up by a certain Kong and will like gray out and will be intangible unless you're using that particular Kong to pick it up. That removes that. It allows you to pick this up with anything. And the reason why this is really important is because we also have on Tag Anywhere. And Tag Anywhere is, I think, the most popular setting, probably the most renowned setting, even prior to DK64 Randomizer, where you do not need to jump into tag barrels to tag to another Kong. You can simply press left or right on the D-pad, and you will be able to cycle through whatever Kongs you have. Turning this off, as well as turning this off, would effectively quintuple the logic in the game. So don't turn those off. Do not ever turn those off. It is effectively programmed to always have those two things on. So keep those on. Isles only, banana ports. We'll talk about that when we actually boot up a seed, which I do have. And we're going to be jumping into a seed to kind of show you, the newer players, what you'll have access to at the beginning of the game. We also have Fungi, and this is a really interesting setting, which is daytime start. I think at some point might be able to adjust this. As of right now, we cannot. But basically the way Fungi Forest works is there is a cuckoo clock in the main hub area that you have to shoot up to out of a cannon, and then use any Kong's gun. It could be Donkey's coconut gun, it could be Tiny's feather bow, whatever the case may be. And you have to shoot the switches in order to make it day or night. As of right now, we are starting with daytime start, and then obviously you could swap them back and forth. There are, of course, other settings, but for right now, we're only going to be doing daytime. And then a similar thing for Galleon, where you have to go over to the lighthouse and swim underwater in order to raise or lower the water. The Galleon water is going to start raised, and then ultimately, if you find the ability to dive underwater, you can then lower it if you need to, but for the most part, it's going to start raised. Nothing over here for difficulty-wise. There's nothing really important here. Next, let's go over to progression. Now, this is where things can get a little complicated. But again, none of these things are changeable right now. Outside of like starting inventories, and we'll talk about that when we get to this key section. But all of this B-Locker stuff, all of this level requirements, banana metal requirements, things like that. This is all stuff that's going to be set in stone for the time being. So you'll notice that we have these levels here. So level 1, level 2, level 3, all the way down to level 8. Level 8 is Helm. And as I mentioned before, Helm will always be Helm. It'll never be shuffled. And you will have to go through Helm in every seed. And the reason you have to go through Helm in every single seed is because key 8, which is the final key that you need in order to get to K. Rool, will always be at the end of Helm. It is not shuffled. It is the only key that will never be shuffled. It will always be in your game at the end of Helm. So you have to, at a bare minimum, in every seed you do, collect 60 golden bananas, which will then allow you to open the B-Locker of Hideout Helm, which will allow you to get into Helm and get the final key. Every other level in the game, so levels 1 through 7, will require 0 golden bananas to get into. So the second you load into your seed, the second you load into your game, if you have a certain amount of levels open to you, you can go into any of them you want in any order that you want. And the game could expect you to go into one of these other levels before level 1. Remember how I talked about earlier that the way that complex level order works? This is not linear. These levels are not numbered because the game expects you to go to them in order. They're simply numbered just for identification purposes, right? because normally level 1 is Japes, but because it could be any level, we just dictate it level 1, and then it could be whatever, it could be caves, it could be forest, it could be whatever. So that's how bee lockers work. Next, we have Trough and Scoff. Trough and Scoff are for bosses. You will need to collect 200 small bananas with any Kong. It doesn't matter. Like, you don't have to collect 100, with 2 separate Kongs. It's just a cumulative total. And again, this is just the max. It can't be higher than 200. It could be anything from 2 to 200. So Chaos Bee Lockers, we don't have that turned on. Same thing, Hard Bee Lockers, Hard Trough and Scoff, we do not have these enabled. Next thing, we have medals for the rare coin. This is the jetpack check. Again, if you are familiar with this game, you know what that is. You go talk to Cranky once you have collected a certain amount of banana medals, and he lets you play the jetpack minigame. In DK64 Rando, you can alter the amount of banana medals you need. So once you have collected 9 banana medals, and they could be from your own game, from other games. Once you get to 9, you can go talk to Cranky. He will ask you if you'd like to play Jetpack. You say yes. You go in. You play the game. It could be something. It could not be something. If it's nothing, you can skip it. Speaking of banana medals, they are shuffled in the game. We talked about that when I was showing off what the items were. You see the banana medals right here, right? Those are shuffled, which means collecting colored bananas in a level with a given Kong is not going to give you a banana medal. It's going to give you a random item, right? It's going to be a random check, right? In order to get whatever that check is, you have to collect 40 colored bananas with a Kong. So if I go into Jungle Japes with Donkey and I collect 40 colored bananas with Donkey, I will get a check. Same thing with every level, same thing with every Kong. 40 is the magic number. For the most part, every DK64 rando setting you will play either has 40 or 45 enabled. It very rarely ever goes over 45. So fairies, this is for the rareware banana fairy, which is normally, the 201st golden banana in the game. In order to get the reward from her, you need to collect 4 fairies. Fairies are, once again, a random pickup in the game. You can find them virtually anywhere. And then to get the check from the mermaid, which is a single check in Galleon, you must find a pearl. There are only 5 pearls in the game. It does not go higher than 5. So once you find one, you can go talk to the mermaid and get your check there. So that's all of the level requirements, stuff like that. So the next thing here is these first couple things are not going to be changeable. K. Rool phase, which, well, maybe they might be changeable. It depends. We'll see what happens on April 2nd, which might be today when you're watching this. Who knows? K. Rool phase is basically just how long the final boss is. Default is 3. Most competitive settings, we use 3. It could be any combination of any of the K. Rool phases. With this setting, enabled. Oh, actually, no. That setting is not turned on. Okay, never mind. I actually didn't see that this wasn't enabled, so you don't have to worry about what that would entail. But, the 5 phases of K. Rool, Donkey, Diddy, Lanky, Tiny, Chunky, they're going to be in a random order. There's going to be 3 random ones that you're going to have to, in order to complete, in order to beat your seed. DK phase is going to require Baboon Blast, which is not a vanilla behavior. It was added into the randomizer itself. So in order to do DK phase, you're going to have to find Baboon Blast. And then another change that we've made to the K. Rool boss fight is the Chunky Phase Slam. Normally, this required the Super Simian Slam, the Blue Slam, in order to do it. But now they've changed it to where you only need the base slam. And again, this is something that probably will be toggleable in the future, but as of right now, it is not. Same thing with Hideout Helm. In order to get that Key 8 out of the back of Hideout Helm, you're going to have to complete 2 Helm rooms. So you're going to go into Helm. The Helm, Helm minigames are going to be randomized. You're going to go in. You're going to have to say, oh, I need to go into Diddy's room, and I need to go into Tiny's room. So you do those 2 rooms. You play the instruments on the pads. The Blastomatic explodes, and then you can go up to the top and get your Key 8. Now, as far as the other keys in the game, this is where you are going to be able, at least you should be able to, alter how many keys you start with in your seed. Okay. Now, these two checks here, all of this stuff here is you're not going to change it here. You're going to be able to change it in your starting inventory in the YAML itself. So you don't need to make any changes here, but you are going to be able to make changes inside your YAML file to where you might be able to start with more than 0 keys. Because the way the slider works basically is the slider being all the way over here means we don't have a single key at all. We don't have a single one. When I boot up this seed here in a little bit that I'm going to show you guys, I'm not going to have a single key. I know where one of them is. It's at the back of Helm. But all of the other ones are going to be randomized. People are going to have to send them to me. I'm going to have to find them. You know, whatever case may be. And we'll talk about what the keys do when I boot up the seed. Last thing is starting number of Kongs. This will be something that you can do inside of the YAML itself. You can start with 2. That is the normal competitive setting that we play with. You usually start with 2. For our purposes here, I'll just start it at 1. But you can start with all 5 if you want to, but you'll do that inside of the YAML, not here. And again, we're going to start with 1 just so I can boot up the seed. One final thing that I want to talk about before we go over to the quality of life and before I jump into a seed for you guys is one of the moves that is inside of these custom starting moves is this one. So this is climbing. Climbing is a relatively new addition to randomized moves in DK64 Rando. And this is quite literally the ability to climb on anything. Without this move, you cannot climb on trees. You cannot climb up ladders. You cannot climb up vines. You physically cannot climb up anything. So because of how powerful this move is, it can effectively lock you out of entire sections of levels. So for the purposes of Archipelago, this by itself will be a toggleable option. If you want to play with climbing available to you, you will get it at the start of the game. If you want it to be shuffled, then you will have to find it, and you will be severely limited in the amount of things you can check in certain levels. So just wanted to kind of circle back to that because I forgot to mention it. So finally, a little bit more quality of life stuff. And again, all of this is just stuff that not only are, we're not going to be turning it off, but you probably wouldn't want to anyway. This is all just stuff that the devs have worked really hard on, making a lot of just quality of life stuff. We have a ton of miscellaneous changes here. You can kind of pause the video and go through if you want to. All of this stuff has been added to make some of the checks a lot easier. Again, we talked about Tag Anywhere. We also have a shop indicator, meaning when you walk up to a shop, there will be a little marquee on the front that says, Donkey buys a GB here, Chunky buys an Archipelago move, Tiny buys an Archipelago move. It'll actually tell you without walking into the shop what you have available to you. Warp to aisles, you can actually warp back to DKLs in the main menu. We'll show that off. Auto key turn-ins is self-explanatory. You don't need to return to K. Lumsey's Island to turn in your keys. It will happen automatically. All of this stuff, again, shop hints, shortened bosses, fast warps, all this really, really cool stuff. And again, like I talked about, Helm rooms have 0 bonuses in them. Because autocomplete bonus barrels is turned on, this just coincides with that, because normally you would have to complete mini games inside of Helm in order to beat Helm, but because autocomplete bonus barrels is on, this is going to be set to 0. So that's how that is. No hints other than just the extra hints, which are you walk onto certain pads and they'll tell you where certain moves are. But the main reason why this is turned off is because obviously we have the Archipelago hint client itself that you can hint your moves in. So there's really no reason to kind of have this on. And then finally, we got item reward previews. And we also have Troffenskopf portal numbers. When you walk up to a boss door in this game, it will tell you how many colored bananas you need in order to beat the boss, which is a really nice change. Other than that, finally, if you come over to cosmetics, here's a whole bunch of stuff that you can turn on and toy with and mess with. You can make your Kongs certain colors. I make all of my Kongs red because I think I'm funny. Same thing with golden bananas. You can do miscellaneous cosmetics, color hints, smooth out the camera. You can even play with Disco Chunky if you want to. Everybody loves Disco Chunky. Some accessibility stuff. If you get motion sickness in this game from the water oscillation, you can actually remove it. This is probably one of the most asked for settings, and it's very, very useful for people that get motion sickness when they play this game. I would highly recommend turning that on if you do get sick with the bobbing up and down of the water. And then finally, the last thing I have to shill for our music, our rando music community. You can, again, if you join the DK64 Randomizer Discord, there is a very, very easy link in order to make your own music pack. And you can plando every single area in the game to play any song you want. There are almost 1,600 custom songs that people have made from various games, everything from Super Mario Odyssey to SNES games to PC games to PSX to anything you could possibly, Game Boy games, everything is in here. I strongly suggest checking that out because it's very, very cool. But that being said, I went through all of this stuff. So what we're going to do now is I am going to gen a seed. And again, this is going to be a little bit of a different process when we're doing archipelagos. But for our purposes here, I'm going to generate a seed. And then we're going to jump into DK Isles. And I'm going to show you guys everything that you can do in the early stages of the game, the Sphere Zero stuff that you can do in your seed when you boot up DK64 Rando for the first time. So let's jump into that. Okay, so we are here. We got Project 64 booted up here. I'm not using my normal my normal stream layout here. We're just kind of moving this on a separate monitor here. So a little bit of a goofy looking setup here, but I feel like this is just going to serve our purposes. So when you load into the game, you are going to be shown a number of things. The first thing you're going to see is this is the load screen. This is going to be the moves that you start with. This is every move in the game. We got the guns along the top row. Then we have our instruments, our active moves, which we have 2 of in this seed. We then have our pad moves, our barrel moves, and then the training moves at the bottom. So to note, if you were to be starting with climbing is in the bottom right of all of those moves. So that would be filled in. Other than that, the moves on the right side, starting with that little film reel, so that is camera. That is, of course, the ability in order to take pictures of the fairies in the game. We have Shockwave, which is how we open up the dirt patches that normally have the rainbow coins. We don't have that either, but I'll show you where they are. We also have the Simian Slams. Again, as of right now, I don't have any of the Simian Slams. I'm pretty sure when this launches on April 2nd, you are probably going to have a starting slam. In fact, I think there might even be an option for it in the YAML. We'll see. We'll see if on April 2nd if they end up adding that. After that, we have homing ammo. Then we have sniper. After that, you can see the shopkeepers along the bottom of the screen. We have all of them, and then those are our 8 keys. Now, again, we know where key 8 is. It is at the back of Helm. But in order to get to Helm, we're going to need to find some of the other keys. And I am going to show you guys kind of how the lobbies work, how the levels work. Also, Tiny got a big old head, as you can see. So, when we load into the game, you'll notice we're here in DK Isles. And depending upon what moves you have, which in this sense, we have, we have none of them, as you can see if I scroll over here. We don't have any moves that we can use with Tiny. But I am still just kind of gonna go over all of the opening sort of checks, the peaks that you could potentially do, because depending upon, what Kong you're starting with, what moves you're starting with, you might have a different layout than me. So normally, the first thing that we're going to do in any given seed is we're going to warp over here to the 1 pad. We're going to come back here, and we're going to take a peek at this grape cage. Okay, so we got a GB back here. Again, this can be anything. This could be a battle crown. It could be an archipelago item. It could be a move for you. This check can be anything. So we'll, make a mental note of that. The next thing we'll do, we're going to actually walk into K. Lumsey's cage, and there are going to be 2 checks in here. One of them that you can peek. Well, both of them that you can peek, technically. Okay, so we got a GB here. I'm not a GB, a blueprint here. That is a lanky blueprint, but as you can see, it's filled in, which means if I were to, technically be able to get in here with Tiny, I'd be able to pick that up. Normally, this checks for if you have a rank stay in sprint, which is a move with Lanky, which of course we do not have. And then we also have a dirt patch right here. So this is one of the dirt patches, and that is Diddy. So you'll notice I can get Diddy if I can find Shockwave, but I do not have Shockwave. So if you had Shockwave, you could walk over here, hold down the B button, and do a little, little spinny or spinaroonie, little Shockwave move, and Diddy would pop out. So you can check those two things. Here we have our exit to Isles option. Next thing you normally would do, at least I would do, you warp over to 5. This is Banana Fairy Island. So inside of here is the Banana Fairy. You need Mini Monkey in order to go in and talk to her. The first time you go in and talk to her, she will give you an item. Regardless of how many fairies you actually have at that moment, she will give you an item. Then when you go back in the second time, if you don't have the fairy requirement, she'll show you whatever her reward is. So let's say there's, a key back there. Once you have 5 fairies or 4 fairies, you can walk in here, the door will open, and you can get that key. We have a feather cage back here, which is a key, so that's what the keys look like. You get a good visual on that with the feather cage up here. And then one last thing we're going to do while we're over here near Warp 5 is we're going to swim over to this tiny little island here. Again, we don't have camera, but if you did, you could take a picture of this fairy. And that's just a vanilla fairy. That's actually kind of interesting. So you can take a picture of that fairy. Then we're going to exit to Isles again. So from here, you can kind of do any of these other things in any order that you want. For our purposes, just because I kind of want to end on explaining how the levels work and how the keys work in this game, we're actually going to come back here. And we're going to walk into the training grounds. We're going to come back here. Now, there are 2 checks here that both of them I cannot get. And there is also a shop back here. So there is another dirt patch, like the one we saw in K. Lumsey's cage. Back there, that's where the banana horde is. But in order to check that, you'll notice I need to swing across those vines, and I need to climb this tree. So once I have climbing and vine swinging, you can get in there and check what that dirt patch is. Next, we're going to come over here. There's another dirt patch at the end of this tunnel here. There are also some donkey coins back here. And again, you will never need to pick up coins for any reason when you're playing Archipelago, because all of the shops will be free. So coins you can skip. If you just want to come back here, pop that dirt patch open. If you have Shockwave, you can. And then finally, the last thing I like to do is check what the Cranky shop has. And you will see the flashing marquee at the start, unless this is just a family shop. Okay, so here you go. So that's what the marquee looks like. So in this shop, there is a donkey, banana, a Diddy thing. There's a key there. We can go buy this key because it's going to be free. Let's buy the key. See what key it gives us. Key 4. Okay, that's actually really nice because now I can show another thing off here. Okay. Cranky's going to talk to us here. You would just be mashing whatever your B button is to just get through this text quicker. And now we are going to kind of explore Isles a little bit. So, or at least how the lobbies work. So, as I mentioned before, there are 7 levels in the game. There is Jungle Japes, Angry Aztec, Frantic Factory, Gloomy Galleon, Fungi Forest, Crystal Caves, and Creepy Castle. Helm is the final level, and Helm is way up there at the very, very top, inside of K. Rool's mouth. But that is not open yet. If you start with no keys, which we did in this video, the only level that you will have access to is level 1, which is directly over here. This lobby is normally where Japes is, and this door will always be open all of the time. This will be the first level that you will walk into no matter what. Now, depending upon what this level is, depending upon what moves you have, obviously you're going to be able to do different checks. We're not going to dive in too much to that because this video would be over an hour long. But let's just, for the fun of it, see what this level is. Okay, so this is Aztec. Aztec, ooh, bonus barrel in here. Let's just see what this is. Why not? See what this move is. Shockwave. Oh, well, there you go. Okay, well, I could go get Diddy if I wanted to. Maybe that's how I'll end the video. We'll go rescue Diddy, I think. So, also, is this hint door gonna say anything to me? Oh, okay, that's cool. It's probably just vanilla behavior. All right, so this would be your level 1. Aztec is level 1 in this seed. But again, like I said, we're not going to go into the levels too much because, again, we could be here forever. So, as I mentioned, Lobby 1, which is that over there, level 1, is open to you from the start. Once you find key 1, and this is where it's going to get a little complicated for newer players, key 1 opens up level 2. So once you get key 1, you can come in here. This is normally where Aztec is, but obviously it's shut for us. So key 1 unlocks level 2. So you're probably wondering, what does key 2 do? Key 2 locks level 3 and level 4. So this is normally the entrance to get into Frantic Factory. You can see the door is shut. Once you get key 2, that will open up. Let's actually just drop down here and show off kind of this other area of Krem Isle that is probably going to be really important to some players. We got to check in here. As you can see, that golden banana just fell from the sky. That's normally where a bonus barrel is that Diddy gets, but I'm going to pick up the golden banana. This is Snide. This is where you would turn in your blueprints to get more golden bananas. Again, with the way Archipelago is going to be set up, you're going to need 60 golden bananas in every single seed because you're going to need to get through Helm. So if you want to dump some blueprints to get some more GBs, you can do that. And then finally, this is one of those battle crowns where the battle arenas are. In order to do this one, though, you're going to need Chunky and you're going to need barrel throwing because, believe it or not, that thing that looks like a boulder is actually a barrel. You cannot pick up anything in the game without barrel throwing. So once you get Chunky and you get barrel throwing, you can pick this boulder up, toss it aside, and then check that. But getting back to the levels, as I mentioned, key 2 unlocks level 3, but it also unlocks level 4. Level 4 is down there. So that is Gloomy Galleon. Normally the entrance into Gloomy Galleon. It could be whatever level, you know, it could be a random level in your seed. But so that gate will open and that door will open up there once you get key 2. Now you're probably wondering, well, what does key 3 do? Key 3 does nothing. It does nothing. In the vanilla game, that is the key that helps you unlock level 8. But for the purposes of randomizer, the only thing key 3 does is it allows you to beat the game. Consider it the light medallion if you're familiar with OOT Rando, or consider it the ice rod if you're familiar with Link to the Past, right? It kind of just only serves one purpose, and that's the only thing it's there for. So key 3, again, doesn't do anything. We do have key 4, and it's actually a really nice key to get because it allows me to explain how this level works. So we came over here to warp 3, and this cannon is here. So that cannon is not there if you don't have key 4, okay? It'll be just like a big boulder. So key 4 unlocks level 5. So this is going to be level 5. This would normally be where Fungi Forest is. Oh, there's a vial here. I'll show you guys what the shockwave animation looks like. So we're gonna pop this dirt patch open, and we're gonna get a feather bow. Oh, so I can go get another key. Really cool. It's actually turning out really nice. So this is level 5, whatever level 5 happens to be. Let's jump on in and see. So this is Factory. So you would come in here. This is normally where Factory is. And then finally, we have, we have level 6 and 7, right? Well, similar to how key 2 unlocks levels 3 and 4, key 5 unlocks level 6 and 7. And the way you get to level 6 and 7 is you're going to warp over here to the 2 pad, and you're going to come over here, and you're going to have to make this jump. Now, this jump is pretty toxic. I don't even really know how they intended for you to get over here consistently. It's that ledge right there where that boulder is. It's incredibly easy with Donkey to do because with Donkey, you can do a little kick, jump, attack in midair setup, and it's really, really easy. With Tiny, it's easy if you have her ability, which is PTT, which kind of allows her to hover. You can also do it with Chunky or Diddy with some clever manipulation of your in-air movement. Lanky, it's like impossible. Lanky can like not get over there by himself. Little bit of a toxic jump, but that is how you access level 6. So that is where level 6 is. And then level 7, which is again normally Creepy Castle. I don't know why I am walking back. I could have just went to Isles. Is going to be over here, where that boulder is. So when that explodes, there will be another cannon that will shoot you up into whatever level 7 is. So you're probably wondering, okay, well, that's all cool, but what do keys 6 and 7 do? 6 and 7 are what open up the gate to Helm. So once you get key 6 and 7, the mouth up there will open up. You will be able to jump across. Helm will be there. It will always be there. You can go into Hideout Helm once you get all of the required moves for it, and you'll be able to go get your key 8 out of the back of it. In order to get into Helm, you're going to need a couple moves. And the first move you're going to need is, let's come over here and I'll show where it is over here. This is the Monkey Port pad. So in order to get up to the top of Krem-Isle, you're going to need Monkey Port. The game's going to tell me where it is. It's in Caves with Diddy. It's fine. But you're going to press Z on this pad. It's going to warp you to the top. You can jump into the lobby. From there, you're going to need another move with Chunky, which is called Gorilla Gone, which kind of serves the same purpose. It's a little pad move just like this one. That will spawn in some vines for you to swing across. And then, of course, you're going to need vines in order to swing across the vines. So that is what all of the keys do. And again, key 8 is always going to be in the back of Helm. Once you get all of the keys, once you get all 8 keys, you can warp over here to 3. K. Rool ship will crash. It'll be like right here on the beach. You can jump in and start wailing on King K. Rool. One last thing I'll do, I guess, before we finish is I'll get this key, whatever it is. Pull out the feather bow. Let's see what key this is. This will be kind of like the final thing we do. Oh, okay. Well, there you go. That's key 5. Should I try to get... Actually, I think I need to reload the area in order for that to kind of sit through. Let's see if I can maybe make this jump and show you kind of how goofy it can be. And then that'll be the end of this video. So... Again, if you watched, I appreciate it. I hope you guys have as much fun with DK64 as I do. I play it regularly. I've been a steady player of this randomizer for almost 3 years. If you have any questions regarding, check logic, how you do things, what the game expects of you, there's a ton of resources in the DK64 randomizer Discord. You can come over to my stream at twitch.tv/KuiperDon'tCare, all one word. And ask me there. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of new players because a lot of people are very, very excited about DK64 Randomizer being in Archipelago. With that, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm going to make this jump and I'm going to try this jump and probably miss it. And I missed it. All right, cool. All right, well, there you go. You got it. That's how you get over here with the caves. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it. I hope it helped. And we'll see you playing some DK64 Archipelago. Morning.